Alright guys, so today I'm going to be going over a super important technique that really is not that hard, but it is game changing in photos. So if you take a look at this photo, you can look at my settings up here on my histogram. ISO super low as always because I don't like noise or grain. I'm shooting on a wide angle 1635. My aperture is f2.8. So with this, you can see right now, this is in focus right now, and all of this is very, very out of focus. The reason is because I was on manual focus and I went as far this way as I could. And opposed to shooting at like a f22 where an image might not be as sharp, what you can do is this technique called focus stacking. So right here, I was focused right here, next photo, and I'm on a tripod. I was focused in this area. And I was focused in this area, and I was focused here, and then the last focus I did, which was this one, and it was at infinity. The next one is what you do is you change your shutter to get to properly expose for the sky. And I did one with a few extra stops just in case, because I couldn't tell if this one was overexposed, which it looks like it might be slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our first image. I'm going to shift click, highlight all of them, even though I'm not sure if I'll use this one, just in case. I'm going to edit these as layers in Photoshop. Let those load. Alright, so those are loaded, and really fast to give you guys a reference as to my shutter speed. Right now, you can see I was shooting at 1/20 of a second, and sometimes when you're doing that, or if you're doing an even longer shutter like 1 second or 2 seconds, you can do this really cool focus stack technique. But if it's windy and you have some brush or some plants or wildlife, especially like flowers in the foreground, if you're shooting at 1 second exposures, like there's a good chance they might end up blurry, or there's a good chance that since they move around, when you focus stack them, you may or may not have to check it and then manually refocus stack yourself. So in the case that that does happen, I'm going to highlight all of these, and we need backups in case, because these are going to turn into layer mask on their own. So I'm going to drag all of them to new layer, and now you can see they all have a copy on them. So I'm going to do Command G to group all of these into a layer. So it's everything we already have right here, but it's backups. So I'm going to say backups for emergency blending. I'm going to put that on the bottom, and let's check our layers. We've got darkest, then we've got our sky, second darkest, and then we have our focus stacks. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to auto align them first, as always when you're going to be blending any exposures. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our focus stacked images, which are these four. These two are just used for the sky, and they are the exact same focus as image 31. So we don't need to worry about that. But these four images all have different focuses. So now that we aligned all of our layers, take all the different focuses, and we're going to do auto blend layers. And we want to stack images on this one. So click OK. Alright, and now that this finished loading, I'm going to do Command D to deselect. And we have an extremely sharp image from the very bottom of the photo to the very top. Just everything looks like it's in crystal clear focus. And this is our merge layer. So what that auto blend did is it took these four layers and it blended the focuses together. And now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and kind of look around our photo. And in case the auto blend didn't do something properly here, we have these backup layers in case we need to do it. For the logs, I don't think we're going to have any issues. But what I'm looking for is duplicates. So if this log had a duplicate, it would be like a 50% opacity looking log right here, which we don't want. So I'm not seeing anything in the logs. Sometimes in focus stacks you do get this on the edges are blurred, so we're going to just crop that out as we would have anyways because of auto lining. And now I'm going to look really closely at this grass because I can't remember if this was windy or not. I had hiked up to this lake and I had to shoot really quickly for the sunset. and then I had to hike back before it got dark. Everything looks really, really well in focus. So the auto blend did a really good job, except right here you can actually see there's some blurriness as for here. So that is there as well on the edges. That's the only spot where I can see it. So now what we're gonna have to do is manually refocus stack that. So I'm gonna hide all my layers, including the sky, open up my backups, and now what we're doing is we're looking for a photo where this is in focus. So super blurry, we want one where it's super in focus. So it's not that one. It's a little bit better, but still super blurry. Still better, but still blurry. That's really good. That's perfectly in focus. 31. And let's see 32. Yep, 32 is the sky exposure. So I'm going to delete the 32 and 33 because we don't need backups of the sky. And what I'm going to do is this one where this image is perfectly in focus on the top of the peaks. So I'm going to take that out of the backups folder. Sorry, collapse this. And now I'm going to bring this up. So this layer right here has all of these mountains in focus. This layer right here is our merge focus stacked image. But it looks like it forgot this top area. After you've done a focus blending, re-auto aligning the layers sometimes doesn't like to work. So to manually align layers, we're going to put this at 50% opacity, and you can see this bottom layer and this top layer. So we're going to move this top layer, and we want to fix this doubling. So with the arrow keys on the cursor, I'm just going to move it over, that's the wrong way, until I can align it. That looks good on the x-axis. Now up for the y-axis, and I think that looks perfect. Alright, so even with that, we still have a little bit of blurriness, but in this layer below it, the reason we pulled it up is because it's super sharp. So now I'm going to make a layer mask on my merge layer, and with a black brush at 100% opacity, just going to brush it in, and you can see that detail come in right away. And that was the only area that I saw any issues with on this entire photo. So yeah, so I think that is perfect. So now one more merge visible layer, Command Option Shift E. And now what I can do at this point, sorry. Alright, so now that we have our merge layer up here, what we need to do is now put our sky behind it. So I'm going to bring these two layers up. We don't need those anymore because we have our fresh merge visible layer. Alright, so this layer right here, I am worried about it being so dark with this being so bright that it'll look really off. So for now I'm not going to use that. For now I'm going to try and get away with this, but just to be safe before I merge it, I'm going to try to get those highlights down a little bit. But the shadows and exposure can be up. Before, after, I'm going to put those shadows all the way up because it's really just affecting the foreground, and that'll make an easier blend for us. Yeah, perfect. So now we have our sky layer and our merged focus stack, and they do look a little off aligned, so really fast I'm just going to manually align these as we did a second ago. So 50% opacity, wrong one. So 50% opacity, and just with the arrow keys, and that looks aligned perfectly. So put that at opacity 100. Alright guys, so we have our sky exposure down here with perfectly exposed sky and really bumped up the shadows in here just for ease of blending. And on top we have our focus stacked layer. So now what I'm going to do is going to make a selection of the foreground. Looks like I have most of it. I don't want any of the sky though. Just doing a quick rough selection. And then I'm going to select and mask up here. I'm going to go up 1 pixel. And now just kind of refine the selection around these trees to make the best blend we can. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that selection. Just get these last few. Make sure I've got all of the branches. And I think that's everything, so click OK. And now just click Layer Mask, and there we go. So the only thing is, this looks too harsh. So now we're going to come in and do that same technique as earlier with a brush at, I'm going to do like 15% opacity for now, and just gonna make a few passes and then switch between white and black brush, and then I'm gonna do the same up here. That definitely looks better, and the sky is a little bit dark, so I'm just gonna, it's like a 5% brush, give that a pass, because the top part doesn't need to be that dark. It was more so right here that I was worried about overexposing. I think we are good to go with that. So now I'm going to do last merge visible layer, Command Option Shift E, and I'm going to do Command T to get those blurred edges out of here from the focus stack, and from the auto aligning, just cropping it. Click Enter, and now you have an image that is properly exposed and focused everywhere. So now what we can do is we can flatten the image. We can either come down here, flatten, under layer and flatten image, or if you have Tony Kuiper's luminosity mask, there's just a shortcut for flatten. So now you can see it took away everything we already did, and I'm okay with that because the file size will get reduced dramatically and your computer speed will still resume at normal. Plus, this is now our starting point. All the stuff we did before was just to get here, so I won't be having to go back from this point. So that is done, fully focus stacked and blended. Alright guys, so for the last one in this image, so you can see this first image until this 11th image is going to be all one photo. So to open up my first, and prior to this I did not realize how underexposed I was. The photo still came out fine when I put it together, and this was my darker sky exposure, but I guess I just in the beginning had not realized how dark I was. So before I go and blend this, just so Photoshop has an easier time, and if I have to manually fix anything just so it's easier, before blending it and focus stacking it, I'm just going to do a base Lightroom edit across them. So really quick, just going to do chromatic aberrations and profile corrections, and I'm going to bump up the exposure quite a bit. Drop the highlights, up the shadows, the whites, down the blacks, a little bit of clarity and vibrance. Greens look a little yellow, so I'm going to try to fix those. Yeah, that looks better. Yellows I really want to shine. These purples I want to be shining, but I don't want to look too oversaturated because we can just saturate them more later in Photoshop. And just base edit, I'm happy with this before, after, and you can tell in this photo actually just this very bottom part's in focus. So I'm going to sync this edit across the photos by highlighting them all and then synchronizing them. And now I'm just going to click over, filter through, and you can see each photo, what becomes more in focus. Alright, so for this last photo I'm going to drop the exposure a bit because I want the sky to still have full detail. Highlights, shadows up for blending purposes, but the rest of them all cover the same edit. So you can see down here's in focus, then here's in focus, then we have about here in focus, and here, here, and lastly like the peaks of the mountains. And that is all of our images. So I'm going to highlight them all, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. This will take a minute because of how many photos it is. Alright guys, now that we have all of our photos loaded into layers, I'm going to align them. Alright guys, now that these are all aligned, I'm going to take out the sky exposure and we're just going to do auto blend to stack images. Alright, so now I'm going to do Command D to deselect that and just kind of come in here, see if there's any duplicates other than the borders that generally happen when doing focus stacking. So now all I'm going to do before I free transform is bring my sky up. Let's look at that. Alright, so for this, let's just make a quick selection of the foreground. Don't really want these clouds in, but I'm gonna blend these how I do most of my photos and how I've showed you guys in a previous one, so that selection is really good. I'm just gonna click layer mask and here comes in the sky. Now we're going to take our brush at 15% opacity and just kind of, as we have before, make a few passes. And then switch brushes, make a few passes. And that should feather your exposures pretty well. The back of the field I'm darkening right now just to make it feather even more into this image. Make sure zoomed in there's no duplicates, and I don't see any. So we're going to do a merge visible, Command Option Shift E, and then Command T to free transform. And there we go. That is our base image. Alright guys, so for the next photo that I'm going to focus stack, this is the same photo we did in the last chapter with Mike, the unicorn mask. He was up in this little corner. But when I was kind of just walking around the cenote, and most people don't go to this side, I actually have been to this cenote 3 times, and this is my first time going past the main area, which was over here. But I saw whatever you want to call this, rocks, but I thought the texture was incredible, and I never had thought to do a focus stack in a spot like this, but I thought it might come out really interesting. So I tried it and it came out really good. So I'm gonna put this one together because here you have this really awesome detail, but back here just looks like blur. You know, you can't, I mean it is, you can't see anything. And you can see my settings. I even had a 4-second shutter because I wanted this water to be super still. So here's my first photo. The most focus is here. My second photo here. Third photo's like here. Fourth photo's definitely all up here. Fifth here. Sixth. And that is all of them. I didn't need to change the shutter at all because there wasn't a sky. Everything was one exposure level. So I have 6 images. I'm going to highlight them all and then edit them as layers in Photoshop. Alright, so now that we have them all in order, I'm just going to highlight them all. And before anything, as always, auto align the layers. Auto, enter. Alright, so now that this image is aligned, we still have them all highlighted. Gonna just go back up, go to auto blend layers, stack images, click OK. Alright guys, so here is our full focus stacked image. You can see in the layer mask everything it took from each. I'm gonna Command D to deselect to get those lines out of here. And now we just need to double check everything. So you can see on the edges there's always seems to be some blur, so we're just gonna stretch the image to get rid of that up here too. But this texture did a really good job of not duplicating anywhere, it looks like. These rocks up here, super smooth, I don't see any duplicates. I just see the edge blur around. But this did a really, really good job at blending. So with just a few clicks, we took a photo that almost you couldn't see anything in this photo if you took it normally. But when you focus stack it, just a few clicks later, you have an image 100% just fully in focus, really, really sharp all around, and really clean image. So now that I have my merge visible layer, I'm going to do Command T, get all of these corners out of here so everything's in focus and there's no blurred areas. Click enter, and now I'm going to flatten my image because this is exactly where I want to start. Unlock this layer because the only thing I don't like are these people in it, but it should be pretty easy. Right here, here, and here. So I'm going to do Command J to duplicate this layer, and then take my lasso tool, just make a quick selection around. I think this one will be easy. Fill with content aware as we did before. Command D did a really good job. And also when you're doing this content aware fill, keep in mind that right now, like maybe there's a little off axis right here, but how zoomed in we are, that you would never notice that unless you were looking for it and really analyzing. Like that blends just fine. So keep in mind when you're doing this that how zoomed in we are. But right here it does have some blur from that, so what I'm going to do is take the clone stamp tool, just because that looks like the blur that was on the edge before, and we don't want that. So with 100% opacity, I'm just going to do Alt click, do one more there. Let me redo that one. And I think that looks a lot better. So now back to the lasso tool. You can either do this in one pass and see how it looks, or in multiple passes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and get them all in one and then see what the content aware looks like. So we have definitely got some blur in here. So now we're going to have to try and do this in pieces. Or we could clone stamp, or we could brush. So I'm going to be doing a mixture of the two. So clone stamp, get this in. That looks better. Get this in here. this lower opacity. We can just kind of brush around and mess with it. And now back to lasso, try to get this blur. What's nice about this is that it is super high textured, and high textured parts to a photo are a lot easier to mask and kind of get away with, but this one was quite a lot because it was a good amount. I mean, there's 3 people. So zoomed out all the way. I mean, it doesn't look too bad, but zoomed in, definitely not my favorite. So what I'm going to do is clone stamp some more from this area. And I'm going to do this about 75% opacity, because 100% sometimes you can get outlines that you don't want. But if you do this 75% opacity, it just kind of blends with a bunch of other things and kind of creates its own new textures. Put some dark. Nope, don't want that. Don't like that either. I'm going to do that at a lower opacity. So unless you were looking for something, I don't think you'd find anything here, because all of this is just a mound of dirt and everything, and I don't think the average person would find it. So zooming out, let's do a before and after. All of those people are out, and you would not know it otherwise that they were there, but their reflections are right here. So I'm going to do one more, copy that layer, Command J, and I don't want their reflections to be in this. So super rough selection. Try content aware fill, and that did a good job. But right here there's some weirdness going on, so I'm gonna try the brush, make it small enough in frame, and I'm just gonna 50% opacity is good around the area. Kind of just sample different areas, different lightness values and darkness values. Maybe lost a little bit of texture in that brush, so take the clone stamp, maybe get some of that back, but we don't want to go too far, just a little bit. And I think we're good. So these 2 layers were kind of healing, so I'm going to group those, Command G, and we have our before, after, focus stacked image ready to go. And now this is a perfect starting point for your edit.